I have with me Darth Azeroth, whom many of you will recognise. And so actually I planned 10 questions, this ended up being 12.
It's fine.
And okay, the first few are about religion, but please don't think it's all going to be about religion, okay?
Fair enough.
Okay, question 1. As a Christian on the internet, do you ever begin prayers with OMG?
Probably not. That's the funny thing. The church I regularly go to is kind of, well, it's Church of England, so the congregation are kind of centre-ish, but there is a kind of a wingnut faction in charge. So they tend to like starting prayers with Father. I always try to start prayers with Lord,
Okay.
which sort of does run a long way, but considering they know my family history, they don't push it.
Oh right, okay. Well you see, I have the Cockney Bible. The Lord's Prayer starts "Hello, Dad." So
A Limerick Bible.
a Limerick Bible.
Yes,
Oh, I would love to see that.
somebody wrote the whole Bible out in limericks.
The whole Bible.
Well, I think they just put all the Gospels together, but that's the Limerick Bible.
Wow. That's quite something. Where'd you get this?
I don't know. I got it as a Christmas present from my godmother.
Okay.
She's very eccentric. So
Yes. Wow.
she doesn't tend to pick these things up, she's kind of old school Methodist. I've got a kind of a mix of denominations in the family. We're trying to collect a sect, I'm told.
Okay.
But we're still missing a few. Funny point, if you want to get rid of Jehovah's Witnesses, mention a mix of denominations in the family, whether it's true or not, because they don't like that for some reason. So my granddad was doorstepped by a bunch of them, and he sat them down for a drink because he felt like it. And they mentioned about mixing denominations. He said, "Well, I don't really have a problem with it." So he says, "See, I'm a Methodist. My wife's Moravian. My daughter's married a Methodist. My son's married a Catholic. So really, I don't have a problem with it. They just left."
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
So if you ever have problems with Jehovah's Witnesses, that's the way to do it.
You heard it here first, the tip. And, would it be okay if I just read a little bit of this?
Sure.
There once was a person called God who considered it really quite odd that some folk adored him whilst others ignored him and called him a silly old bod. So God said, "Some stories I'll tell, so that people might know me quite well, and some tales were hairy, some charming, some scary. There were also some strange ones as well." Excellent.
Fantastic.
Peter Wallace. Okay. Fantastic.
Yeah, I think he is actually a biblical scholar, which makes it even more funny.
Yes.
Because there's stuff from bishops and people on the back, so Bishop Caution and others. Yes. It is kind of an approved.
The Cockney Bible is endorsed by the Archbishop.
Yes, I did hear about that, and there was also one attempt to write it in text speak.
Oh, fantastic.
Which I don't think they ever actually published it. I don't think it got that far. But there have been all sorts of attempts to sort of retranslate and redo it in odd, amusing ways.
Oh, fantastic.
Which is a lot of fun.
I tell you, you'll have to take part. We're going to do a battle of the Bibles. When I'm arguing with my Cockney Bible, we're going to have Gunderson with the Yorkshire Bible, Angus with the Glaswegian Bible. There's a Scouse one. Try and get Jason to do it with the Scouse Bible. And you can have the Limerick Bible. Is yours a Scouse? I think it's a Scouse one.
I know there's a Scouser who's on my sub-list.
Oh, okay.
Stiesel, I don't know if you've heard of him.
No.
He's constantly arguing with the anti-natalists.
Oh, right, okay.
He's been a lot of fun. He's a mathematician.
Okay.
And his catchphrase is "fucking math, right?" Which is.
Alright, well, we'll have to get him on board, maybe. And you can argue with the Limerick Bible. And
yes.
We'll see. And
I'll chime in with the Lolcat Bible.
There's an Lolcat Bible?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Oh, awesome.
Superb. Okay. Question 2. Is there a quote, a non-biblical quote, that you find so insightful or inspiring that you wish it was in the Bible?
so many quotes. Because when I was writing the Shadow World books, I had to put a lot of quotes because the whole point of World of Darkness is they have a lot of quotes at the beginning of each chapter, and I had to mine quotes, which took me forever to find them. And some of them were just downright silly. I think obviously it wouldn't have been in the Bible, but recently Rob Gilbert said about he said about the Olympics. He said there's 20 billion on the opening ceremony. I could do it. I could do it for 103 quid. That's scissors, ribbon. 100. I can get Bill Ollie to open. He'll do it for 100 quid. Oh, and if you want to splash out a bit more, we'll smash a bottle of champagne on Middleton's arse or something.
Well, that should definitely be in the Bible. There's no doubt. And okay.
I would say probably a more one that could actually apply there. The reason it's a quote from the Penguin in Penguin, Pain and Prejudice.
Okay.
He turned around and he said, "The reader he said, do you have a question why you drag me in here when you let these people go all the time?" No, because they look like one of me and I look like one of you.
Yes.
No, wrong way round. Sorry. It was they look like one of you and I look like one of me. Because he's got the famous big nose and the sort of inbred features.
Well, yes.
So, and he does look quite monstrous.
Well, yes. Is there a quote in the Bible you wish weren't in there?
Well, I wish a lot of Leviticus was better displayed, because of the fact that, from what I know of archaeology and sort of the archaeology of the Bible, history of the Bible's transcription of things, most of what we have now in Leviticus is so badly mistranslated, and so badly. But most of it, I mean, the classic one, the Bundy's using its homosexuality, that actually, probably in the original text, wasn't actually mentioning homosexuality. According to some recent discoveries, they didn't actually have a word in Hebrew that was anywhere near.
Yeah.
And they were wondering why this was. And contrary to the assumption of the right, this is because of the fact that it's so normal back when they didn't have a separate word for it.
Yeah.
And remember, these are very primitive people we're talking about. The ancient Egyptians famously believed that women could conceive through the mouth. So.
Yeah. Yes. The car?
The reason why I'm rather silent is because sitting here, it'll record my voice much louder than yours.
Yes, of course. Okay. That's why she's not commenting on whether she can conceive orally. So.
Yes, Alex, that's exactly why.
Yes, so the Leviticus would be our kind of... Have you seen there's a kind of meme, there's a picture online.
Oh yeah, the go to two, that verse to 2, despite the fact that 2 verses later it says you don't get to 2.
Yeah. Yes.
That was actually, that meme was created by a group I'm subscribed to on Facebook called Christian Left.
Okay.
In fact, the vast majority of the anti-Christian memes on the internet are made by the Christian Left.
Fantastic. I like that.
Because they're anti-right-wing Christian rather than anti-Christian generally. So a lot of them tend to originate from the Christian side. Ironic.
Yeah, it's all, I think, in the theist community on YouTube, where the atheists and certain theists meet is where you'll kind of like the socialist sort of atheists meet the Christians who say Jesus was a socialist. That kind of is not a difficult point. Actually, another religious question. Because you were raised Methodist but now you're C of E.
Yes.
Okay, so what would you say are the best and worst points of Methodist?
Well, the interesting thing about the Methodist Church is how it's kind of ended up falling into the same trap as the C of E did originally, in that it kind of stagnated. But and this is very shame. A big shame. I read a biography of John Wesley by a guy called Roy Hattersley, who's a Methodist. I think he's a Methodist minister. I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
He's from Wales, but he famously said that the main reason that John Wesley was excommunicated and the Methodists became separate from the Church of England was because he was too enthusiastic.
Right. Okay.
But the enthusiasm was originally not the kind of enthusiasm you get within sort of the modern wingnuts fundamentalism. It was a kind of sort of very sort of practical sort of, as you say, socialist. Actually, they were going into prisons, and of course most crimes were punishable by death then. So they were sort of standing with the condemned, and they were going out into the communities. They were preaching in fields.
Yeah. Okay.
Not 2 cows, 2 people.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
There is a very amusing thing when you talk about the medieval era and the famous thing. Oh, they were constantly arguing about how many angels could dance on the head of a pin. No, that wasn't actually one of the stupid ones. The really stupid one was that they literally thought they were people with heads of dogs around. There was a saint who was reputedly one of these. And they were debating on whether these people had souls.
Right.
That was the really pointless one.
So the question should be: is it a human soul or a dog soul?
Exactly. It's so well that sort of time. The idea of an animal having a soul would seem preposterous. So.
Okay.
It's the kind of care they had. They didn't have that kind of sort of like family, more like tools. So,
yeah. I could see how that would work, because nowadays you get people, because of evolution, people see the soul as something that's sort of developed and sort of grows like an onion, and we'd have to say, did early man have small souls, the apes have very basic sort of souls, but are they all in the same heaven, is the question.
Yeah, when it comes to dogs, I think they're a lot cleverer than we give them credit for. But then again, most animals, pigs are. Winston Churchill famously said, I like pigs. He says, cats, they look down on you. Dogs, they lick your boots. A pig treats you as an equal.
Fantastic. Okay, and, now this is a very, very important question. Okay, zombie invasion, weapon of choice.
Umbrella.
Umbrella, you've got one luckily.
Yes, I have.
I have one too actually. I'll get mine out and we can have a fight. So, would you sort of whack the zombie or stab the zombie?
A bit of both.
Bit of both, okay.
Probably stabbing was probably worse because they would sort of get closer to you and flail about, because stabbing them, you have to sort of hit the head.
Yeah, definitely. Go for the zombie's head, people, okay? Aha. Okay, right. What first interested you in, we're coming up to the plug now, what first interested you in writing / roleplay games, and could you sort of elaborate on your roleplay book, because luckily you have written today.
Yes, well, I kind of fell into the whole I've always been wanting to do writing professionally, but I kind of fell into it by accident at university. When I was looking around for a character sheet for my favourite game at the time, which was Bloodsucker the Angst, which is a parody of a game called World of Darkness, which was just so incredible. The Americans take it very seriously, but every British player I've met of it just takes the piss out of it. It's so ridiculous. It's a kind of a secret world vampire-y thing.
Okay.
Well, vampires, werewolves, ghosts, goblins, whatever. Yes, literally goblins, because now we've got changeling now. But, yes, so what I ended up doing was writing for this, because the author said, we don't have a character sheet because I play all my games online. I said, well, I like it, I could write you some material for it and do it as fan material. He said, fan material? I said, fuck off, you can make some money out of this. And he said, if you write it any good, I'll publish it. And that's how I got started. And last year I finally got to move away from the Shadow World, which, because I had I was doing a lot of Shadow World stuff, and I decided to take a break from it. And that's when I came up with this little thing, Tough Justice.
Okay.
Tough Justice was actually the second choice of a break. The first choice was kind of, I thought I'm going to spend too much time editing this to get these exactly right, the tone exactly right. So what I ended up with is Tough Justice, which is basically Garrow's Law with the serial numbers.
Oh, right, okay.
We do that a lot in the role-playing game industry at the moment. Rather than waste money on a license, we just kind of make up our own stories in a setting that is similar to a property. So, for example, my boss, James Desborough, did a game called Agents of Swing, which is a bit like the old British TV series The Avengers.
Okay.
Only mixing in the Doctor Who of the time, the Man from U.N.C.L.E., and all the other strange sorts. He calls the genre spy.
Oh, that's a good term. Spy.
Which is his best review of it so far was actually at a British gaming convention where they said it's like Spycraft, but it's not shit.
Okay.
Anyhow, Tough Justice was like as an interesting one to do because I just fell in love with the period because it's just such a good representative of what we're dealing with today, same sort of mentality we're dealing with today when it comes to social issues. But I wanted to sort of do the upper classes. I was reading a book by Katie Hickman called Courtesans, so I decided to make a role-playing game called Courtesans, which is all about the few women who actually managed to sort of carve themselves out an independent life, albeit only by being a professional mistress. Basically.
Okay.
Not quite a prostitute, but a professional mistress. They were sort of setting themselves up as the mistresses of various important people and manipulating events. Funnily enough, the most powerful woman in the Victorian age wasn't Queen Victoria. It was a courtesan called Catherine Waters, also known as Skittles.
Okay.
Mainly because of the fact there wasn't a single person in any level of power, including the Queen herself, who she didn't have the ear of.
Oh right, okay. Yeah.
Because of the fact that she was so involved in those, she was involved with both Gladstone and Disraeli.
Wow.
And several others. She didn't quite like Disraeli. Preferred Gladstone because Gladstone famously, very devout, high church Anglican, decided that part of his hobby really was going around with the Rescue Society, which was a group that went around preaching to prostitutes.
Right. Okay.
And obviously, most of the early time they would get single. Well, it wasn't single at the time. They'd get men on their own going around to them, so they wouldn't attract suspicion.
Right.
But not suspicion amongst the prostitutes.
Okay.
So unfortunately Gladstone didn't help himself when it came to throwing up accusations that he was after more than just their souls. On his deathbed, he spoke to his son, who I believe was Archbishop of York at the time, and said, "I have never committed any act which could be construed as infidelities of marital debt," which has been interpreted recently as a kind of like a Clinton excuse.
Right. Okay.
But I wouldn't know one way or another. He can't.
He didn't do it in a bed.
Yes.
Yes.
I've moved on since. Doxy was the third of what became a series of history class, which is that is about the common prostitutes and criminals and some of the raving psychos that are around that time. Because although it will be probably going in the next one, Transported, that one does cover a lot of the sort of criminal culture as well, and you can easily use it to run games like Pirates and things. Although I don't like the idea of running, there's so many pirate games out there. I'd like to do something different.
There are bare breasts in this book, by the way.
Yes.
plug it a little harder. We do
Hang on, let me zoom in.
Breasts in this book.
Zooming.
That's Brad K. McDevitt's artwork. He's a very good artist.
Okay.
And I've also got into war games because this is how I got into role-playing games. I was a big Warhammer fan, so I did my first tabletop war games at this stage on Warhammer 40,000, which got me into the hobby. Again, the art on it, the cover art there's Brad.
Can you tilt it a bit because it's shining on it a bit down further? Let me zoom in on it, see if I can get it better then. Yes, that works well. Okay, there we go.
And to go with going into miniatures games, I'm now actually selling miniatures as well. These are available from Table Warfare. We do an Orkin address. Does anybody else on the net do an Orkin address? No. I've done some really weird Google searching and nobody else does an Orkin address.
So now you know where to get them. It'll all be linked in the description. And you do not just print books, but ebooks as well.
Yes, there are electronic books. Although I'm not that fond of them myself. When it comes to electronic books for role-playing games, most of them I only release in PDF format on Drive-Thru RPG because of the fact that ebook format it just isn't cut out to running, putting artwork and tables in yet. But for other books like novels and other stuff like that, it's all going to be in proper ebook and Kindle format.
Okay.
There is a difference. EPUB is for the iBookstore and basically everything that isn't Kindle. Kindle's got its own format and it's very irritating.
Yeah, okay. So, and you sell globally, I take it?
Sorry?
You'll ship out anywhere in the world?
Yes.
Okay. Aha.
I actually had somebody in Iran ask me if they could get hold of the books.
Wow.
And I told him, said yes, and I gave him the links, and he said, PayPal's blocked in one country. And so I was like, okay, so how are we we're still trying to work. Fortunately now Lulu do accept cards properly.
Okay.
So you don't need a PayPal account.
Why would Iran block PayPal?
I believe it's something to do with their business practices. They're very the way they give you a sort of charge on every transaction and things. That's kind of contrary to Islamic law. So they don't even like interest.
Of course, yes.
So the idea of being charged for money transfers just rubs them up completely the wrong way.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
But the really funny thing is, I kept saying this to him. Look, I don't think the authorities in Iran would be too happy with me mailing books to you with pictures like that in.
Well, no.
And I have a feeling that when it comes to some of the more interesting parts of the world where there are these restrictions on form, my books may actually become a sort of acceptable substitute, which may be a good way of marketing.
Yeah. Okay, it's always amazing when you think of the strange places, because I sometimes sell paintings online, and there's a painting of mine actually hanging in Israel. I'm trying to think, what's the name of the desert I'm trying to think of? If you could put one thing into room 101, I'll explain that in text form as well for people outside the UK. One thing into room 101, what would it be?
Public schools, which are private schools in this country.
Right, the posh boarding schools like Eton and Harrow.
Yeah, Eton and Harrow, because of the fact that people who go there. I've only met one person who's not been particularly successful who ever went to one, and that was a guy who used to run our writers group.
Okay.
And he wasn't. Well, he'd done some stuff with Colonial Radio, but beyond that, he really hadn't made sort of a big impact on the establishment. I think that's mainly because of the fact that he was anti-establishment. But then again, so was John Cleese and all these others.
Yeah.
So, but generally, I just don't like the idea that they seem to have the world handed to them on a plate, really, when it comes to the old school tie and things like that, which is still a problem.
Yes.
Because look at the three party leaders, even the Labour Party leaders, they're all public school.
And the mayor as well.
Yeah, well, the mayor, I believe that Boris's main appeal, I did a whole video on this, Boris's central appeal is that he is everything that British politicians are pretending not to be.
Right. Yes, exactly. Yes, he's just honest. But, yeah.
Receptive, perception is he's honest, but that's...
Well, he lacks the guile to be good at being dishonest, which you would think would be a bit of a hindrance for a politician. But I liked him when he just hosted TV shows. It's so funny hosting Private News for You, like stay in show business, you know. But we've always got the choice between him and Ken, who's also dodgy, so dodgy in a different way.
I'd vote for either of them.
Well, no, I did vote for Ken once when he was independent, like 10 years ago. Okay, another politics question. Which fictional character would you make world president and why?
Probably the Penguin.
You would make the Penguin world president?
Yeah, I mean, he gets a very bad rap, particularly from Batman, because of the fact that although he was based, I've always identified with him because he was the kind of the sort of bullied outcast, and the sort of the one that was always being put down, despite the fact he had a sort of a reasonable start point. He had a reasonable start, and he was always being put down mainly because of how he looked.
Yeah.
But with me, it's more to do with my Asperger's and things like that. So, although I do have the same sort of large nose, not quite as large, but I did used to get, and my ears I used to get called squawkers, which was fun. But yeah, I think centrally there's a very good person in there, just given a very sort of bad start. And aside from the occasional incidents involving giant penguin robots that the greatest detective on the planet couldn't prove belong to him.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've got a meme about that.
Oh, okay.
He's a relatively nice guy. He's most funny thing about DC is most of their villains are nicer guys than their heroes.
Yes, I've seen you comment actually that you do think that Batman is a bit of even in the video I think you said Batman's a bit of a, and actually I do agree. That's why I have very divided feelings about the film Dark Knight, because I just sort of think,
well, Christopher Nolan is something of a neocon, and he did write The Dark Knight as a kind of a defence of Bush.
Yeah, well, right. Okay.
So you really can't. There's no ambiguity anymore. I mean, although at the time it was released, this wasn't public knowledge, so they had a kind of a thing where both the left and the right claimed it was their film.
Right. Okay. I can see.
Because of the torture scenes I'm talking about, maybe the left were thinking, yeah, maybe that's showing them.
Well, the bit with the two boats is very left wing. The bit with the two boats is That's
battery blinking.
All right. Okay. We're gonna rush through this bit now. What's the funniest thing you've ever seen on YouTube?
Probably Abby Normal One's reaction videos. I really wish she'd do more of them, because they are hilarious.
We'll find the funniest one and link that in the...
that'll be the one to a Serbian film.
I think I have seen that, yeah. And, okay, this might be a bit of... Try and make this as brief as you can, but what did you find most interesting about studying biblical archaeology, and would you recommend it as a subject?
Well, I covered a lot of sort of archaeology of myth in general. Or we say myth is kind of a general term. It's kind of odd, as I said in the video. Generally, essentially, the main thing is how, in finding out the possibilities, we tend to kind of leave the source text completely behind. And it bears no resemblance, and for that reason I would recommend it. If you have a very academic mind, which I don't, I have real problems sort of citing sources and things, and I just, my mind just doesn't work like that. I'm more of a creative person, so maybe I'd say academia is for people who are academically minded, and there are a very small number of those people, which is why I made the video The University Trap. Which was about how people are being forced into universities, basically, and it's not suitable for everybody.
Okay. Gotcha. Actually, before I do the final question, just sort of a challenge, would you give a bit of backstory, because you wear that ring all the time, it's in every video, and in real life you're wearing it.
Yes,
Would you show it to
I
me?
think it's rather ironic because I suffer from a anxiety condition, and I think it's rather humorous that I actually wear the ring of the Sinestro Corps, who their main sort of driving force is causing fear in people.
Right.
And I also think I really like Sinestro's philosophy. It's disturbing to a lot of people, but it is sort of, when you go down to the basis of sort of society, it is really the main way of driving people is fear.
Right, okay. Can you pull an apple apart with your bare hands? Thank you very much.
Thank you.